First off, I want to say thank you guys for joining us today. I know Tamara likes to sing my praises. I'm just a loudmouth who's learned how to control her mouth a little bit better. My name is Heather Rosenberg, and in my professional life, I am the children's ombudsman for the Florida Department of Children and Families. So what that means in my professional world is I work on behalf of children who are in foster care. If they have any kind of an issue that happens in the course of their case, they can reach out to me and I can help with service navigation. I can help with knitting together different organizations, not really arbitrating things. So, I mean, I could do that, but that's not really the way I choose to work. The way I choose to work, and Terry, you brought this up, and Jennifer, I know that you're in the process of becoming a practitioner, but I choose to treat everything through the relationship lens. So everything that I'm going to preach today and from now on really comes from setting up relational situations where you can build on that relationship that you develop with staff, with members of the legislature, with the school system, and basically with other members of the community to help support our kiddos a little bit better. Our journey through FAS actually started back in 2012 when our middle kiddo was placed with us. We got him the first time when he was 4 days old, and we had him over a weekend. So I think we had him like either 3 or 4 days. And then the judge reunified him. He went home with his family and stayed with them for another 4 weeks. And then they took him back into care. And he came back to us again when he was 6 weeks old. And that time it ended up being a permanent stay. And not too long after he came back to us permanently and asked us if we would consider taking a new baby if they decided to shelter. And so my husband was like adamant no. I was adamant yes. And you know, the man might be the head of the family, but the woman turns the neck, right? Yeah. So I totally subscribe to that. And I can see him in the other room. He's making faces at me now. But so we ended up, when Ellie was born, we ended up taking her as well. Through the course of the pregnancy is actually when we found out about mom's alcohol use. And it wasn't until mom's mom, grandma, and I were having a conversation through email that she disclosed that mom was drinking pretty heavily throughout both pregnancies. And I didn't know what that meant. I mean, you know, anybody who's gone through foster parent training, you get a very small introduction to alcohol and substance exposure prenatally, but they kind of gloss over a lot of that. So we had no clue what we were in for. I was just like, oh, okay, it's just one more thing to know about. It wasn't really until Liam started getting a little bit older that we realized that there were some issues there. He couldn't come to the midline, couldn't hold his bottle. He definitely couldn't cross the midline. So, you know, if you're not able to do this or this, there's a lot of things that are going on inside that little brain that we need to pay attention to. So we were very lucky in that we were referred to early steps, and we had a lot of intervention thrown at him very early on. We didn't know what kind of intervention we were throwing at him. It was just like, oh, he's not meeting certain milestones. And so it was through his journey and learning how to support him effectively, not only in daycare settings, but at our faith institution, out in public and all of that stuff, that I really started to learn a little bit more. And then Tamara and I met. She had come up to Tallahassee to do a training with all of the psychologists and psychiatrists here in town on fetal alcohol syndrome. And so I was like, what the heck, I'll go to the training. I'll take a look at it. You know, I had met Catherine at a training at the summit a couple of years earlier. And so I knew of the Florida Center and just didn't know how amazing it was. And so I went to the training, and Tamara and I hit it off very, very well. And she convinced me, hey, even though you know, and you've already had a geneticist basically give you the bones of the diagnosis, come do the testing. Let's see what we can do, because I think there's more that we can do for you. And it ended up being the best thing we've ever done for these kiddos, because my God, it gave us a tool set. I mean, they basically, by the time we walked out of the Florida Center, they handed us a tool belt with a ton of different tools on there that have come in so handy in so many different realms. When we ended up changing schools and coming to this part of town, I was able to walk into their IEP meetings and lay everything out on the table. Every single thing I asked for, they gave me. No fight, no fuss, no muss. incredible. Whereas with our old school, it was fighting tooth and nail. And part of it was they had taught me the language to use and the magic words. So I say all of that to say I'm walking the same walk that a lot of you guys are walking. And now I want to kind of turn it around a little bit and talk about how we can work together to more effectively support our kiddos. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislative process, but advocacy isn't solely in the realm of the legislature. There are a lot of things that our legislative bodies can do for us, both at local levels, at the state level, and at the federal level. But the vast majority of the work that we have to do is not really convincing the legislature to do things, although that is important. It's really convincing those people who are in our kids' day-to-day lives, right? So it's learning how to do things that are going to support them in their educational setting, learning how to support them in a faith-based institution, learning how to advocate for other resources in your local community, like high quality mental health care, high quality healthcare, period, getting doctors even really to understand how fetal alcohol syndrome impacts a child's day-to-day life and their health trajectory as well. So, like I said in the beginning, the thing that I always stress is this is relationship based. Everything that you do in the realm of advocacy is almost like a personal brand, right? And the one thing I'm going to tell you guys that nobody told me up front, that if I'd have known in the very beginning would have made life so much easier, the folks that you're going to go and talk to, the legislators, whether it's a representative or a senator, whether it's staff, if you go and you talk to your commissioners, whether it's county or city, if you go and talk to your mayor, if you go and talk any of these folks, they're no smarter than you are. They're no different than you are. They're going to put their pants on one leg at a time. Although I don't know, some of them might try to pull that two legs off thing, but they're absolutely the same as you and me. So there's no reason to be worried, anxious, or upset anytime somebody says, hey, you want to go with me up to the hill? It's nothing, I promise. These guys and gals are as normal and regular and abnormal in some ways as you can possibly imagine. So try to take some of that stressor off of yourself first off. The big thing when you're going in to talk with these folks, you're the policy or you're the subject matter expert. You live this life. You are supporting kiddos who have a vast range of needs, and you know what those needs are. And you know what you have done to try and find something to support those needs. What you're going to do when you're going in to advocate is actually tell their story. And here's another thing I tell people to do. Because it is so relational and because it is storytelling and it's trying to get somebody to connect to something that may potentially be completely foreign to them. If your kiddo is of an age and ability to go with you, that's actually an incredibly neat tool to be able to take with you. In the years when I was working on adoption intervention language, it took me 7 years to get a piece of legislation passed here in Florida. Every time I would go in and talk, I would take one of my kids with me because it's showing them these are the little lives that you are in control of right now. And it's making that tangential connection for them to something that is, just, words being spoken to, oh, this is the real life human that we're talking about now. One of the things I have found the most helpful in my advocacy journey is recognizing who to tap into. Everybody wants to go and talk to the congressman, right? They want to talk to the representative. They want to talk to the senator themselves. Term limits, they're not there very long. In the state of Florida, you've got them, for a couple of years, and then they either have to move to the other side or they have to get out altogether. The folks who are super, super, super stable, who you're going to see over and over again, are actually staff. Your legislative aides, your legislative analysts, the secretary, your scheduler, those people tend to stay in those positions for a longer period of time. So don't treat them as an afterthought. Those are actually the keys to the front door. If you can learn a little bit of something about their staff and develop a relationship with their staff and bring some value to them, they're going to let you in the door a lot faster than they're going to let somebody in the door that they don't already have that relationship with. Schedulers are particularly important. So if you can figure out who the scheduler is and find some way to endear yourself to them, they'll move heaven and earth to get you on the schedule at a time that works for you. The other thing is looking at timing. So in Florida, and Terry, I know you're in Arizona. I don't know a lot about Arizona, so I apologize. I'm not going to be able to speak too much specifically about your state, but a lot of this will cross over in some ways. In Florida, we have session once a year, generally in the beginning of the year. It kind of floats a little bit. So sometimes it starts a little bit early in January and is done by March. Most times it starts around February and is done by the end of April, maybe the beginning of May, unless we have a special session called. That's totally something different. All of the work that we're doing right now is not going to make a hill of beans for this legislative session that's going to end at the end of next week, right? But we're laying the groundwork for what we're going to do over the course of the next year, so that by the time session comes up next year, we have pre-primed anybody that we need to talk to. They have a little bit of base knowledge about what we're going to talk to them about. We've already developed those relationships so that then when the organizations that we're working with to do these advocacy pieces tell us, hey, this bill is coming up, we need to have this conversation with X, Y, and Z, we're already there. We've got that relationship. You can reach out to the scheduler, you can reach out to the legislative aide, and you can feed them the information that they need. And they're desperate for this information because they want to know that they are making quality decisions, because they know everybody's looking at them. They're looking at their voting record. They're looking at, what bills they've introduced, what bills they've supported, what bills they've not supported. And so you're building that rapport and that relationship with them throughout the year, so that at crunch time, you can go in, and that's when you're really pushing, hey, you've got this bill coming up forward, and I need you to support it, and here's why. And because you've already been in front of them a time or two earlier in the year, they're already used to you. You're not having to go in and build that entire relationship in a day right before they're going to go out onto the floor and talk. I apologize. I decided last night to start training again, and it's really polleny up here. So if I sound like I've got a frog, it's my fault. I apologize. Claudia, get down. Okay. So let me ask this. How many of you guys have already done anything where you've gone and you've spoken to either a legislator or a lawmaker or county or city commissioner, your mayor, any of that? Show of hands. Anybody? Regina, you have? Jen, I know you've done a little bit, right?
I did lead this, it was a little while ago, and we had Zoom meetings, but I haven't really, I haven't had much face-to-face opportunities.
Okay.
But bring it on. I got Neil done.
Regina, what was it that you've done?
I tried contacting the different commissioners, the congressmen, all that kind of good stuff, just to get past the gatekeeper was very, very difficult. They weren't very welcoming or inviting. That's how I ended up at the governor's office, because I wasn't getting any response, and I went through the list for my county, for my for the state, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I looked up the governor's wife and saw that she was really into children and stuff like that. So I tried calling her to contact her. And I want to say, and I'm trying to think of who it is, someone on here, I think it's you, actually. There's a gentleman, I called the governor's office and they gave me a number to, so when you introduced yourself, you said you were a liaison for adoptions or something like that.
Zach? Was it Zach Gibson?
Yes. The two of you spoke to me on the phone. It has been over 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. That's how I was able to get contact or get the information about Tamara and their organization, because the governor's office put me in touch with you guys, and you guys are very informative. You stayed on the phone with me. You taught me so much information about what I should do, where I should go. And then you said, by the way, here's this organization you definitely want to go to, because I wasn't getting anywhere with anyone else.
Good. Well, I'm glad we could be useful. Well, so, and the interesting thing about that is until Zach and I started having conversations, he had no experience with FAS before. He had no experience with TBRI. He had very little experience with what it's like to raise kiddos from hard places. And it's through developing relationships with him. And we've gone a couple of different places and traveled together a couple of times that I've brought him along. So now he's, anytime he gets a call like that, his first thing is to either connect with me or to connect with the Florida Center. So that's, that piece of the relationship piece is super important. What are the things that you guys what is it, so that I'm not just talking at you, I want to try to make this a little bit more interactive. What are the things that you guys are wanting to do right now that you feel like you don't have the expertise in? Like, what is it that you need? Rosemary, what do you think it is for you that you want to get out of this kind of a training? You're on mute. Rosemary, you're on mute.
So much to say, Rosemary.
So sorry. I haven't gone to the legislative process in California because Sacramento was, 10 hours of a drive away, and it wasn't possible with children in school. However, I have met my congresswoman there was Karen Bass, one who's pretty well known, and she would come and do talks in the Culver City where I lived. And I advocated for the Alcohol Alliance when this county wanted to raise or increase the hours of bars. So the FASD network of Southern California, we wheedled our way in, and they all never thought of this aspect of the alcohol problems. They were all concerned about drunk drivers past 2 a.m. and stuff like that. So we were able to, two of us, participate with stuff like that. So I've done periphery. It's kind of different in a humongous city like LA. So I haven't done the go to Tallahassee or even go to Sacramento. And but I have gone to conferences and met the folks. I've been to Proof Alliance in Minnesota, and I've heard other folks. So I have no problem speaking to them when it's the off times and you have the opportunity, or roundtable discussions, and wherever we could get FASD to be recognized or even have people hear us was what I was doing. So I would like to move up to, now that my daughter is graduating high school, I'll hopefully have the ability to move about a little more easily. I mean, she's still going to be in school, but it's still different. I won't have to do IEPs about, goals that are math oriented. Now it's about what is she going to do to occupy her adulthood with hopefully work or whatever she is interested in. So that is my interest, is to start to be able to go, because I know Tallahassee is not too terribly far from where I live, and get more involved in the advocacy project. I think Medicaid waivers are insane, and I never heard of that before. Once you get approved, and of course my child didn't get approved for fetal alcohol syndrome. She got approved for services in California because she has an intellectual disability. So we were able to go that route and get services for her at age 8. So hearing that there's higher level folks in Washington that are starting to look at those issues is really important to me, because nobody should have to wait, 5-10 years for services, particularly when you need to move because you have aging parents that brought me to Florida. I'm stuck in the middle, and I had to give up my child stuff to make sure that my mom with dementia has what she needs. So it's like I need to get involved in that process myself. Plus I have years of, like I've been in the trenches raising 2 children as a single adoptive mom. So I worked a full-time job up until 4 years ago. So and my other experiences, I worked for UCLA and mostly in the medical area. And then my last 4 years, I was in residential life. So I went from the oldest fellows, medical fellow students, to the youngest freshman students. And I was pushing fetal alcohol training for the RAs in the dorms and places. I got them understanding that there's a catchment for the regional center, which is kind of like APD here. So I wheedled my way into places so that people recognize that, alcohol is more than the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and how to punish or, do restorative justice for breakage on the campus in their drunken stupors. But, I wanted them to educate college kids about this so that they would start being more, careful with birth control and things like that. So those are my areas of expertise. And then latest is my wanting our girls to be educated, particularly our fetal alcohol or our disabled children in gynecological care. I don't think anybody teaches women how to deal with that kind of service. And I think our children are like the most vulnerable to the abuses that can happen. And I bring that up because California, Los Angeles has 2 ugly cases going on right now. And it's a huge need that our kids don't have that kind of medical education so they can understand what to expect and what's going on and what is considered legally acceptable and medically acceptable. So those are all my kind of crazy interests altogether, since I am raising a girl.
Well, you bring up something interesting. So you don't have to go to Tallahassee, and you don't have to go to Washington, or you don't have to go to Sacramento to really be an effective advocate at either a state or a national level. All of our legislators have regional offices. So if you are in St. Johns County, you would look up who your legislator is for your area and find out where their district office is. You can actually go into the district office and meet with them instead of having to travel to Tallahassee. Now, Tallahassee offers a unique experience for a number of reasons, particularly if you're up here during session or during committee weeks, because you have access to so many of them at once. And if you get really good at stalking the halls, you can actually kind of pounce on somebody either in the elevator or as they're walking around a corner. Don't tell them I do that, but I do that. And it also doesn't have to be in person. So a lot of times you can be a really effective advocate by putting a concise email together that has some information, putting together a little bit of your story, but then also giving a little bit of information. But one of the things that you have to be really careful of is, in the beginning, I would write these diatribes. Like, my emails would be 10 pages long. And I mean, I'm a pretty good writer. I keep you engaged and entertained, and I might even throw a dark joke in there a time or two. So you'll laugh and cry at the end of it. But I was losing people because I was also very angry about a lot of things. So one of the things that I had to learn how to do, and this is something I wish somebody had told me in the beginning too, was learning how to drill it down. The exercise that I do now before I get ready to go out and talk to somebody, and sometimes I'm not doing the physical pieces of it anymore because I've done it so long. I know exactly what I'm trying to do, but I'll write down, this is the information I want to give out to somebody. And I'll start with the 10 pages and then I'll whittle the 10 pages down to 5, down to 3, down to 1, where I can do a number of things. I can talk for a minute. I can talk for 2 minutes. I can talk for 5 minutes. I can talk for 10 minutes. But in each one of those pieces, I'm going to hit every one of those big moments that I need to hit in some way, shape, form, or fashion. It's only when I get out to the 2, 5, or 10-minute speech where I can expand a little bit more on there. So you have to get it down to the bare bones minimum, where you're giving enough information to hook them in. And it's almost like you want to think about, you're writing a commercial that's going to air on TV. You want to hook them in some way, give them enough of something to where they go, wait, well, oh, hold on, no. I need, can you go back to this? That was an interesting point. I need some more information on that, because if you leave them wanting more information, that's creating an opening for you to then leave behind like a 300-worder, leave your contact information. You're setting yourself up to be a subject matter expert in this particular area, where they're going to come back to you time and time again. And you don't have to do that in Tallahassee. You can do that sitting in your living room right now. You can develop those relationships over the phone with the staff. And once you've really developed that relationship over the phone with the staff, at some point in time, it becomes easier to go, can I talk to the member? Is the congressman there? Is a representative there? Is the senator there? And a lot of times they'll be like, you know what? Hey, actually, that's a really good idea. I would like them to hear from you. And then as you're developing that relationship and that piece of it, you're setting yourself up for when there is legislation that's going to come down where your testimony would be really important. You've got that key opening to go into a committee and be able to stand up and testify in front of the rest of the committee. And they're going to start connecting you. So like Regina with Zach, all I was doing every time Zach and I were traveling somewhere together is I would tell stories. And I would reel him in with those stories of, I mean, and I would pepper them around. I tell the heartbreaking ones of, sitting on a phone for 2.5 hours trying to get anybody to find an occupational therapist for us. With, a story about, this popped up on this day yesterday. About 4 years ago when Liam was 4, we had a big swing set that we had built in the backyard, and their impulse control is not great. It has this little wavy slide that goes down there. Well, they would like to drag this ride-on toy up to the top and ride the wavy slide down on the little toy, and then they tumble over and bust their faces open. Or yesterday, the picture popped up. He would actually scale the side of the playground, so he'd be 2 stories up on the side, hanging on by his fingertips. And I'm like, the ER trips, they're normal. We've been investigated by DCF a time or two. It just becomes a part of your daily life. And so through telling those stories and really kind of connecting the dots of what this life looks like on a day-to-day basis, he got really interested in it and realized and was able to connect to a lot of the calls that he was getting have this prenatal substance or alcohol exposure component to it. And oh my God, now he's woken up to the idea of, oh yeah, we need to connect these folks to better resources. And so as I've kind of developed him as an advocate, he's also developing other people as an advocate for me. So what we're doing on an individual level, Claudia, go lay down, please. What we're doing on an individual level has a multiplying effect as well. So you called Zach connected you to me. I connected you to the Florida Center. You're now becoming an advocate with a bigger voice. It's that multiplier effect. And so that's what I try to get people to recognize is everything that you're going to do has the ability to build. You're not going to get yes on your first try. It's not going to happen. It can happen, but I'm managing your expectations right now. You're going to get so many no's. You're going to feel defeated, but you're living this life. You have parented these kiddos. You have 100% success rate on waking up the next day, even after a bad day so far. And so use that dogged determination that you bring into your day-to-day life, into your advocacy work as well. And recognize you're going to get 1,000 no's, but you're building towards that one yes. Yes, ma'am, Tamara.
I just want to add on to this because, you talk about relationships, and that's like the importance of staying connected to the community. So I may not have a relationship with somebody, but you might have a relationship with that person. You introducing me to that person now heightens that relationship. So us as a team, like if you're working in a silo, like alone, you're really, it's harder to do. And I just think that's always the key thing. How do we multiply all of our relationships?
And so those relationships are important, but the stories that we're going to bring are important too. And here's the thing. So when we're describing our kiddos, do you say, my ADHD kiddo or my FAS kiddo or blah, blah, blah? People aren't going to connect with that. You're going to talk about your kiddo first, diagnoses second. So, and I don't have it with me because I don't have my purse here. I'm used to doing this in person. But anytime I go and I sit in on somebody's office, whether it's a district administrator, whether it's a school administrator, whether it's a legislator, I've got a little book that I made. It's a picture book that I did off of like MPICS or something like that. And I've got these really amazing, just candid photos of my kids doing all sorts of cool and crazy things. I mean, some of them might just be, one of my favorite pictures is of my oldest kid. He had just had a blue ice cream cone. He's wearing this beautiful blue shirt and he's got his tongue stuck out. And it's just, he's just a beautiful kid. And it was a great picture, lots of color and everything. And then Liam, my middle kid, the one that's going to either end me up in prison or dead, I'm not sure which yet. He looks like a J. Crew model. He's blonde hair, blue eyes. I mean, he's got a million megawatt smile, very photogenic. So I've got some pictures of him. I've got pictures of my youngest, who's my daughter, who I might not have pushed her out, but my God, the child is a little mini me and she doesn't ever stop talking. But so I'll whip this book out and I look around their offices, or I usually do. I should have been a stalker. Maybe I was a stalker in a previous life in like a legitimately legal kind of way, not like the bad kind of way. But, I do a little bit of, y'all are all laughing. Yeah, I really am serious about that. I do a little bit of research on these folks before I go in and talk with them. So I know, do they have kids? Do they have grandkids? What are their major areas of interest? Where did they come from? How did they end up in their job? So I'll go in and I'll sit down, I'll kind of look around their office and I'll find something that's interesting. Like, Terry, you've got a pool table in the background. I might talk to you about, back in my younger days when I used to play competitive 8-ball. And, I'll try and create that connection. Well, I'll whip my, oh, I found a kid's picture. Haha. And you've got one that looks like one of mine. So I'll flip over to Liam and I'll go, okay, because I had to go and talk to Ted Cruz one time when I was advocating at anyway, that was a whole nother story. But anyway, so I go into his office and I'm looking around and I found a picture. Well, hey, you've got one that looks like my Warren. And so we kind of built a rapport around that. I felt like I needed to take a bath afterwards, but that's a whole different thing. And so I'll whip it out and I'll be like, so let me tell you about Warren. He's an incredible kid. He is as smart as a tack. My husband used to, when he was a little kid, like an infant, my husband would take him to daycare and it was an hour in both directions. And so my husband was studying for the bar and he would listen to the bar exam tapes on CD in the car. And so this kid at 11 years old is like a barrister, man. He can sit there and cross-examine you like nobody's business. He can argue and he makes me feel like I'm going crazy because he's got great points to make, and you get them laughing or you get them like connected like that. And then you can stem into. And so one of the things that we struggled with Warren in the beginning is trying to get a diagnosis when you've got a kiddo who is so high functioning that to the naked eye, he looks like a neurotypical kid who just might be a brat. And he's not really a brat. Some of those big behaviors that we were seeing that were coming out of him were his bid for attention because his body felt dysregulated. And what he needed in order to get his body to feel a little bit more regulated is high quality occupational therapy. So he needed somebody to help us go in there and figure out how to do, how to get his large muscle groups working more appropriately. And even though he could argue with you and use his comprehension of vocabulary is like this, he's got a huge expressive receptive language gap that you wouldn't see just by not scratching any deeper than the very surface. And so by being able to connect him to this kiddo first, and then the diagnoses and how the diagnoses impact his day-to-day living, you're creating an idea that you're not just talking about some random human out there. You're making it personal, and you're explaining why this child that you love is just like this child that he may love, or his grandchild, or somebody that's in his community or something like that. So you have to connect the dots for people, because most people are not automatically puzzle putter togethers. I hate doing jigsaw puzzles because I can't see the picture. I can't do that. But in the game of life, I can connect disparate ideas and put together a picture on my own. So that's what you have to do for these folks. You have to find the ones that like the jigsaw puzzles and build the picture for them. Or if they're not a jigsaw kind of person, then you have to build the Venn diagram and make sure that you get the people, places, and things that they love inside that Venn diagram in some way, shape, form, fashion. Terry, for you, I know that you're struggling in your area because there are no resources. What types of things have you done so far, and where do you feel like you could use the pointers in a better direction?
Well, first of all, I, I don't even know about the whole government system. That's been one area that has never interested me. But I've been all across literally the map of the world looking for resources since about January, but really probably the last maybe month. I've because there aren't any resources here in our state, all the resources keep leading me back here, but then I've already talked to all those people. And I mean, people that I've talked to in Minnesota and in Washington, they're like, wow, you really have like researched this out. But yet it's been really frustrating. I guess I'm at that point where you might have been when you first started, of being angry because our child is very high functioning. He's bright. He has a lot of talents, but now he's at the point of 2 weeks ago, he pulled a knife on my husband. And so I had to call the police. The week before, he put a hole in our wall, and he's never done anything like this before. The night before he pulled a knife on my husband, he was out all night. We don't know where, but he had a backpack outside of our window. And when he snuck back in, he didn't bring his backpack in, but I found it the next morning. In it were a bunch of tools that he took from our house and our work, and box cutters, and a hanger that looked like you would go to break into somebody's car, home, whatever. And we have never seen any behavior like that before. So this child is crying out for help. I'm crying out for help. And yet there are none. So I'm here to listen, to try to learn what can I do as a mom. We might need to send him away at this point because he's at the point of not wanting to be in our home. We don't know why, because he's not communicating with us. He just says, I don't want to talk with you, get out of my face. And so we're in a really hard spot right now. But I'm believing that he will get to a point where he will see that we're trying to help him. And I do believe he's going to do great things in life. So I got to keep on keeping on, and I will. One thing that you said that strikes me the hardest is it is an invisible disability, even to us as parents. During those years between first grade and ninth grade, I really thought, because he is so intelligent and high functioning, he's an excellent musician, artist. Every sport he played, he was like at the top of his sport, but he doesn't have that perseverance trait. So he just ended up quitting. Anyways, I'm sure I'm rambling, but I just, one strength of mine, I'm not a great speaker. I'm not a big person to go and talk with a legislator, but I have a marketing background, and social media is a great platform. So even if I can't do anything on my local level, if I can't go anywhere, I will try to push still, but possibly I can work more on a national level or worldwide level to get people to know about what alcohol does to an individual in the mother's womb. And I guess I also need to learn how to not offend people with, I'm not sure why the subject is not more well known, but on the flip side of it, I know I need to be careful not offending people, mothers that drink. And so I need to learn about that piece before I.
So you bring up a really interesting point. You say you're not a big speaker. You're not the person who would go and talk to a legislator. You just spoke so eloquently about your kiddo. And I connected with you on that. And first off, I just want to give you a big hug right now. I wish I could. One of the things that I might suggest, I'm gonna do two things here. One of the things I might suggest for your kiddo right now, sometimes they can't reason through or understand why their behaviors are coming out like that. And talk therapy doesn't work very well. You got to get them in a playful state. So, we're very big to talk about with little kids, play therapy, getting kids to play, and through play, like working in the sandbox or whatever, that's when things come out. Same thing with parents and other caregivers. Your kiddo, if you try to have a one-on-one conversation with them, hey, why did you have box cutters in your backpack? They're not going to come out with that. Go get a bike or a scooter or, whatever you can think, whatever they're interested in, and go play with them. And while you're playing, that's when you can start to have those conversations. And don't even go into it with an expectation. Just go and get your bikes or get him on a scooter, or you're on a scooter and you're just out doing something, and just, hey buddy, how was your day? What's going on? That kind of thing. And if you can do it in a non-threatening kind of environment where there's a component of play attached to it, where it doesn't feel like you're A, therapizing them, or B, parenting them, that it's just you and him just going and connecting on such a wonderful and intimate level like that, a lot of times that's when the veil comes down and they're able to express those things that aren't going to come out when they're not relaxed and not expecting it. So there's that. The other piece of it is social media is a fantastic tool. Part of the way I ran, or part of the way I ran amok at the department in the beginning before they hired me, was I ran a blog, and it was it was hellfire and brimstone. It really was. I mean, there were no punches pulled, let me tell you. I laid out exactly all of the problems and warts and everything of this life. And I called people out and called them to task. And it rallied the caregivers, like the parents loved me, but the system hated me. And what I recognized is I went about it a little bit the wrong way, because I offended the system. And I offended the people working in the system because I didn't have an adequate understanding of what constraints and pressures they were living under too. So I took that down, that's all gone. And I rebranded and rethought through some things. And so now I will 100% tell you exactly what's on my mind. Jen's probably seen this a time or two. I have zero filter. And so you're gonna get what's in here. But now I do it differently. Now, instead of doing the angry mom approach, I do okay, I'm the tired mom. And this is where we're coming from. And these are all the things that we have tried, but I'm 100% forthright and forthcoming about our journey. And I'm very public about it, because what I found in my work and in my travel is that there are way more than the 6 of us out there. There are hundreds, thousands of us out there who have no idea that other families are living the same type of life that we're living. And so if I can get out there and try to normalize some of this for other people, it makes it easier for them to step forward and say, me too. That's why the Me Too movement took on the life that it took when that first really came to light. Is we live a life that is very hard to describe to people. There's a lot of judgment that goes on in the life that we live, not only from people looking at us, but from us looking out. It took a lot of years and a lot of red wine for me to finally come to a place of grace, compassion, and understanding for my 2 youngest biological mom, because I was angry at her for a very long time. And even now, even in my state of grace that I can offer for her and compassion that I can offer for her, I still have those moments where I have breakthrough anger, and I'll express it. And then I'll temper it a little bit and say, I'm having a day. This is one of those days where I just really wish I could strangle her. Yeah, I know. I see that, Tamara. I'm getting there. And then you know, and then I go, but I also recognize that she had her challenges as well. So what I'm going to say to you, and I know we're trying to wrap up here, is you don't have to think of yourself as a great orator. You don't have to be Abe Lincoln coming up and you know, giving the great speech. You just have to talk about your story. That's it. You don't have to be eloquent about it. You don't have to have the perfect wording, and it's okay. You're going to say some things that are probably going to offend somebody. Think through it a little bit and try to recognize that some of the moms who do imbibe in substances before, they didn't know they were pregnant. So there is a you know, a grouping of people that it's a total, oh my God, I didn't know kind of thing. There's a grouping of people who they may have known that they were pregnant, but they didn't know that alcohol is a teratogen and does all the things that it does. So you kind of get used to that. But you're going to live your truth, and you're going to speak your truth, and you're going to do it in a way to where you're building, and you're creating those building blocks to create those relationships, because these are not a one and done kind of conversation. This is a conversation you're going to have at multiple points in time with multiple people, and it's going to build, and it's going to do this for years. And that's what you want to do, is you're building that foundation to then come back and add the next layer on, and the next layer on, and the next layer on. And everything that you do is going to multiply. And you're going to have some random conversation with somebody in a grocery store, and that's going to spark their interest. And then they're going to have some random conversation, and that's going to spark. So what we're doing is building our pyramid until we make it a strong building that's no longer just a pyramid. Tamara, I know we're at time. Do we have time to let, if anybody has a question or anything like that, or do we need to?
Well, I'm going to end the recording.